Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the Lords of Consciousness podcast, videocast. I'm your host, Clint-culberson, and I'm super excited for our guest today. His name is Tolec, and he's a human representative of the Andromeda Council. And I feel like a kid in a candy store today because one of my pleasures in life is to just explore the extraterrestrial world and the possibilities that exist there. And so today I'm really excited to ask so many questions to you, Tolec. Welcome, my friend.
Clint, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to have an enjoyable time as we explore all sorts of things that are going on.
Oh my gosh, there's just so many events that are happening now. It's almost like the last year of events. There's been more things happening than the last 10 years combined, it's all into 1 year or something. It's crazy how it's unfolding and showing. There's a great revealing going on. There's like the controlling hand of this planet is kind of showing their hand in many ways. And so for many people who've been beating the drum of truth or of, hey, this is what's happening on the planet, who've been in such a small minority now are being vindicated in many ways. So it's a super exciting time to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me, even in this country, our country in the U.S., we're experiencing change, certainly on the political and social and governmental front, like we haven't seen not only in 8 years, but from what I understand from my people. We're going to be experiencing a level of change that we haven't seen since the end of the Civil War. Dramatic. And we can get into some of that if you want to.
Oh, absolutely. This topic is probably the topic I think about most beyond my own personal world, my family and my daily happenings. Like when I think of the world, this is where I go. So I'm a lover of history, and I think a lot of the people who watch our content also have an interest in, the history of mankind in a sense. And as history is happening right now in the present moment, it's exciting to be here, And I wanted you to kind of give me a little bit of your background and explain what you are experienced in terms of your connection to a council from the closest galaxy, the next, our neighboring galaxy, and explain also like the difference between what you're experiencing and what other channeler types like Bashar and the other ones that that are out there doing that. What's the difference between what you're doing?
Sure. I'll give everybody a taste for some of the things that I've been through. And I haven't done this in a while, but this will be a little bit of a retrospective. For anybody that hasn't heard of me before, I spent 17 and a half years or so in the healthcare software industry at all sorts of levels. Got out of school with a university degree. Interestingly enough, in government. Never worked for the government. I had one internship and one externship, and one was with local government, one was with the state government, and of course I'm young, I'm in school at the time. And I was like, what a mess! These people just keep walking around in circles and never get anything done. I'm not going to work for any government in any shape, form, or fashion. So I had an uncle who was working for Digital Equipment Corporation at the time, and it was sort of like the statement of the 50s, plastics. And he said, computer industry. So I ended up starting my career with Cigna, the big healthcare insurer, helping to transform, at that time, like 81, 82, 83, 84, helping to transform all of their health adjudication medical claim offices from pen, pencil, and paper to computer systems. So we were way ahead of the curve.
Wow.
And I 17 years in that industry on the software side. I migrated from the healthcare insurer behemoth monster kind of company where I was employee number like 571776423. You know? I'm like,
you had your little barcode on you.
Oh man, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I went to work for a series of progressively smaller healthcare software companies where I was responsible first for technical support, and then installations and training, and then marketing support. And I did that, like I said, for about 17 and a half years. And I ended up being on the management team of this small healthcare systems integrator. And the guys asked me to do some work on some financials. And I hadn't done that for a while since I was in college, but I found I had a knack for it. So I got out of that. I was in the venture capital world for about a year and some change, and I had an opportunity to come up that thrust me into international banking. And I did that for about 12 years, and that was the education of a lifetime. I got out of it. I was two things when I was there. I was primarily a liaison between the bank or the asset management firm and our clients. And I did that for a little while, but I immediately after that stepped into operations. I've always had a knack for operations, and that means making sure that whoever I worked for was in compliance with the different regulatory agencies. And laws were passed, like Banking Secrecy Act and AML and OFAC and a whole bunch of others. And in any case, in the process of making sure that either the international bank I was working for or the asset management firm I was working for was in compliance, I discovered a whole bunch of fraud. And a whole bunch of people were high level, we're talking executive level banking officers lying through their teeth.
Wow.
Yeah. And I got out. I left. I left in March of 2011. And it was, and if people think back to that time, if you remember what was being said, at least with alternative news on the web, if you will, regarding the time of late 2011, 2012, 2013, you will remember that there were, I think the initial number was 25, and then it turned into 37. It might have ended up like 52 or 53 mid-level systems guys, mid-level managers for HSBC, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and others that had mysteriously jumped to their deaths.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Also during that same period, a number of executives started playing the I'm going to leave this chair and go to this chair game, and they left their positions. The number got as high as like 600 and change last time I looked at it, or high-level bankers from international banks around the world all at the same time started to move on so they couldn't be tracked. So, the fall, or if you will, the dismantling of the existing financial system, that's when it all started. Now, it hasn't completed yet, but that was a time frame of very busy activity. And again, due to the high level of fraud that I found, I just got out. And I'll give you one example, and we can move on to current stuff. The firm I was with, we had a client who had, I want to say 111, 112 million in capital. And that wasn't a lot of money compared to our other clients, but he wanted to move 30 million of that money from the Caja Mar Bank on the Iberian Peninsula down in the southern part of Spain. He wanted to move 30 million from that bank under our control. And I speak a little bit of Spanish, enough to convey what we needed to have done. Wrote the necessary letters, submitted the documents, and basically I had 3 to 4 days of conversations with the senior vice president of, if you will, client services for that bank in Spain. And excuses, denials, excuses, and finally they said, "We're not doing it." And I said, "Excuse me, we've submitted the correct paperwork. Your client, whose money you have, has given you directive to release the funds." And they said, "That's correct." I said, "So you have a directive from your client to move the money?" "Mm-hmm. We're not doing it." I said, "All right, that leaves me no other recourse other than to contact the European Central Bank." I went, "Go ahead. We don't care."
Wow.
Yeah, and that's
Jeez.
that's just one instance of just outright. That may not be fraud, but it's certainly sticking a stick in the banking system. Because essentially, what happens is, if there's 30 million sitting somewhere and it had been in their bank for a long time, it's encumbered, it's entwined, it's been leveraged. And if we were successful in withdrawing that 30 million, then they'd have to find a replacement for it, because they've got that money leverage, and it's almost like a multi-tentacled octopus, and they've got that money leveraged and compounded and leveraged many times. So it's been multiplied and lent against many times out for years.
Jeez.
So that didn't work. Then we tried to assist the client to get a line of credit from that same bank so he could do what he wanted to do. They wouldn't. The bank would not do that. Again, that's just one example, and there are hundreds that I lived through. And after a number of frustrating years, I just went, "This is insane. I'm not doing this anymore." Now, keep in mind, I was not working for HSBC or Credit Suisse or Deutsche or any of their investment arms. I was working for either another international bank that was smaller, or I was working for a smaller asset management firm. And the game was, we're the big dogs, we sit at the table, we control the cards. We don't know who you are, we're not doing it, period. And of course, if we did, we'd have to find a way to replace all that money that you want to move. And we had clients that wanted to leverage $250 million, $150 million, to be, clients that had in the billions, and we'd say, "Okay, we'll leverage 2B for you." We use the SWIFT system. Nothing got done. And that's because, to use a metaphor, there's a fixed card game. And that card game is controlled by the clearing banks, the HSBCs, the JP Morgans, the Credit Suisses, Bank Paribas, all the banks that clear the transactions, they control the game.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And
Yeah.
it only makes sense that if you have the most money, you get to control it. That's why this whole system is bunk, and why the idea that there's a shadow government is only logical. It's only logical.
Oh yeah, we had one client who, if you looked really closely under the covers, they had 13% of all asset holdings in HSBC. And HSBC wouldn't do what we wanted them to, as directed by the client. So that was, like I said, that ended in 2011, and I'll rewind a few months earlier. In September of 2010, I began to have the reinitiated contact from the gentleman who I described as commander of the primary Andromeda Council biosphere. And so my life was already going in a different direction anyway by March of 11. And by the last week of April of 2011, I finished the first version of the Andromeda Council website and published it. And so in some form or fashion, I've been doing this Tolec work for the Andromeda Council since the last week of April 2011. And it's been an incredible ride. It's been unbelievable. As I was describing to you earlier, as I was touching on some of the topics that brought me into this version of my life, prior to my move from the Northeast to Tucson in '91, I didn't have any of these experiences. This was not part of my life, conscious ET contact or telepathy. And since I just mentioned this, I'll spend a moment on it. There are people who are known as channels. It's highly likely that they also participate in telepathy between themselves and the higher dimensional people they're communicating with, but not necessarily so. Everything that I've learned and experienced regarding channeling back to the very early 90s, in my early days in Tucson when I started meeting a whole bunch of people, is that channels typically experience a shift in their personality. The volume and tone of their voices will change, and they'll just sound different. They'll act and speak differently with a different cadence.
Almost possessed in a sense. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean it in like a.
I think rather than possession, I think it's more like allowance, because they're allowing.
There you go.
Yeah, they're allowing a higher dimensional being to use their physical body, to use that person's physical body as a communication pathway. And so, as an example, somebody that a lot of people recognize, Bashar, and others are channels. I can't channel. I don't know how to do it. It's not something I do. All of my communication with the 5 people that I speak with that are Andromeda Council members, it's all communication with my mind to mind. It's called telepathy. And everything that I've learned about telepathy is that time, space, distance doesn't matter. Millions and millions of miles, it doesn't matter. 50 feet away, it doesn't matter. Telepathy it seems to have no boundaries in terms of the ability of the Earth person communicating with whoever it is in the higher realms. So I know we've jumped a few topics here, but ask away. What kind of questions do you have? What I know.
Do you have full-on conversations in your mind with the council? Or is it some more of like a lot of bulk of information just being downloaded into your consciousness?
Both. It's both. And so here we go. Since you said the council, I'll lay down some reference points. On Earth, this interdimensional, intergalactic, interstellar development and governance body. Okay, so think deep space, United Nations.
Okay.
Really good correlation between the two and how they function. On Earth, they're known as the Andromeda Council because some of the members come from star systems and planets both in the Andromeda galaxy as well as the Andromeda constellation as we see it here from this planet. And the greater balance of those members are star systems and planets in what we know as the Milky Way galaxy. It was formed tens of thousands of years ago as we can estimate time, probably far longer than that. The greater percentage of member planets, especially the senior member planets, are already higher dimensional worlds. They're either crystalline based, and the higher up you go, they're plasma based, intelligent energy life forms, anywhere from 4D all the way through 9D. I'm aware that the 9D beings are actually people from Arcturus. And so when I have conversations or get downloads from my contacts with the council, here's who I'm talking to. Since I'm not talking to the whole governance body, and actually that's comprised of 12 senior homeworlds with senior ambassadors and their diplomat buddies. My contact is with sometimes the chairman of the council, He's actually from the Andromeda Galaxy Zenithal star system. Sometimes it's with Vice Chairwoman Tanya. She's from a planet called Terial, T-E-R-I-A-L, which revolves around the Meroc star system, and that's in the Andromeda constellation. Mostly my conversations and the information comes from Ambassador Tanka, who's from my home planet called Dakote, and the gentleman who's the commander of the primary Andromeda Council biosphere, and he's also responsible for the 11 other biospheres as well. It's any combination of one or two or three or four of those, depending on what my questions are like. And I'll get imagery, like snapshot images, video clips. I can hear them speak telepathically as well. There are sensations that I get. So it's all of those things that are methods in which I communicate with them. And this has been going on, from what they tell me, since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
I only started to have conscious memory of all of this stuff when I took 3 trips back in time, and I basically left what was at that moment contemporary 1993, and this commander brought me in his 35, 37 diameter foot ship, back in time to western Kentucky, rural Virginia, on three separate trips over the course of a week and a half in the latter part of the summer of '93, and that's when my life changed.
Damn.
Things went quiet for a while, and then in September of 2010, a whole bunch of other things started to happen, and that's when I started doing all of this formal Tolec work. I interrupted you. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You mentioned that your home planet, the Dakote, I think it is. Does that mean that's where the life before this life? That's where you were from, or what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for anybody listening to this conversation, if you look at me, I'm an Earth human male. I'm about 5'10". I've got dark hair, in my late 50s. I've always lived on this planet, was born on this planet. So now, what's the reference to Dakote? Before I get into that, I'll give a more greater global reference. From what I understand, about 100,000 years ago, most of the people that we consider today to be, it's a word commonly used in this genre called starseeds. These are the people whose soul originated in different star systems, whether it's Halcyon or Merope in the Pleiades, Arcturus, and there, let's see. There are a bunch of different star systems where there is life, where there's higher dimensional life. And the soul is considered higher dimensional life. And so about 100,000 years ago, a whole bunch of souls from around the cosmos started to migrate to planet Earth to have 3D organic experiences. You are a 3D organic person, so am I, so is everybody else in this world. And yet, these 3D organic bodies are in fact truly animated by what anybody, even thinking about religion, would call the soul. So, about 100,000 years ago, a whole bunch of souls decided to parse off a piece of their total soul and come to Earth. And today, that the breakdown of that number is there's about, I don't know exactly, but sort of like 72, 75%, roughly, of Earth humans are starseeds who've come from other star systems that have chosen to live Earth lives.
So 25% are just Earth based.
Yeah, kind of.
Or their soul started here in a sense.
the roughly 25% are actually the people who originally came from, like, the original inhabitants of the Lemurian. There's apparently a Lemuria planet out there in the cosmos, and or bodies that supported people at that resonance. And Mark Kimmel has greater knowledge about this aspect in this time frame. But apparently, Earth was a higher dimensional world for quite a while, and then it was stepped down. So there were some original souls that came here a long time ago, and they had the Lemurian, Atlantean, that whole experience. There's only about 20 to 25%, let's call it 22.5, that are still here on Earth. The rest of them are, like I said, from a whole bunch of different star systems. And so here's the connection regarding planet Dakota. Planet Dakota is located in the Tegeta star system. If you looked at the Pleiades, it's like right around 1 or 2 o'clock. That's, if you think of the clock face as an orientation. Tegeta is like right around 1 o'clock. It has 4 planets: Vela, Pyra, Dakota, and Era, E-R-R-A. And based on what my Andromeda Council contact people told me, my soul essence first started to experience life on the planet Dakota. And from what I understand, and I've learned just recently, all of the people that were on Dakota at that time, they originally came from the Lyran star system. And this dovetails a lot with what Wynn Keach and J. Perone and others are talking about in terms of human life. When human life first started to do the panspermia, the migration across the cosmos, humans predominantly came from Lyra.
Is that in the Andromeda galaxy? Or is that a different galaxy?
No. If we look at, I can only give you, based on what I know, our perspective. We see the Lyran star. I think Vega is one of the predominant planets, but we see Lyra up in our sky, and I think it's
okay, so it'll be Milky Way.
Categorized as within the Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
Now, from some other perspective in space, maybe categorized a different way, but
right. Gotcha.
Just like Vice Chairwoman Tanya, she's from the Merak star system. We can see that from standing here on Earth with telescopes. And that happens to be in an area of space we categorize as the Andromeda constellation. So that's why there's some of these references to Andromeda. Yeah.
So I want to get into what influence the galactics have on the reality of what we're experiencing here on planet Earth right now. You know,
good question. It really is. More of what I've learned. Here's the relevance. Okay, hierarchy. Let's discuss, if you will, the hierarchy of life forms. All the way from creator or creation. And I'm not attaching any religious connotation at all. Just that energy life form that was initially responsible for the creation of the universes and the galaxies and the cosmos, all the way down to the elementals. It's my understanding that sort of like the second layer down from creator or creation, there are I call them sub-gods or godlets. And they were actually responsible for the physical creation of the galaxies and the different vibratory frequencies. And there are other layers, dimensions, entities lower than where those guys are, the godlets. But in any case, based on my understanding, these godlets, sub-gods, have created an evolutionary blueprint for all galaxies, all solar systems, all planets. Each planet, each star has its own unique, if you will, signature, its own unique digital vibratory rate, and its own evolutionary chart. And having laid out this information, here's the therefore. Therefore, these creator gods, godlets, if you will, and these guys are, just for reference points, these guys are much higher up the pecking order than what the people in Palestine and the Israelis called lords or gods. Those were simply higher dimensional people that were traveling to Earth. These sub-gods or godlets that I'm talking about are way, way high up in the pecking order. Again, they're like just one layer down from creator or creation.
Got it. Like you said, they're the creators of the galaxies themselves.
Right, the galaxies.
Okay, well, that's way up there.
Yeah, and the galaxies and the star systems and the nebulas and all of the stuff that we find across space. Well, it's these godlets, these sub-gods, that have imprinted an evolutionary blueprint on each galaxy, on each star, on each planet. And it's essentially the evolutionary blueprint, if you will, that this is our moment for this planet and this solar system as a whole to move up one complete level and vibratory rate to the next dimension, if you will. And when that moment of transformation happens, we're going to pop out at like 4.5, 4.6, the upper areas of the fourth dimension. And we'll, relatively speaking, somewhat soon go into the fifth. Now, I don't know when that will happen, but there's got to be an adjustment period of being in the fourth for a while before we bump up to the fifth. And when people talk about, in general, when people are talking about the shift, the event, the transformational shift, the higher dimensional shift, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the life forms on this world no longer being organic and mortal, but in fact transforming into becoming crystalline, fine essence matter, spirit matter. And our lives then become what we would term immortal. We could just go thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and when each of us says, "Well, I've been 4.8 or 4.9 long enough. I want to become a fifth dimensional person." They simply make that decision. Higher dimensional people do not die. They just don't, because they're not organic. They don't have flesh, blood, bones, muscle. They're made out of energy and light.
So do you think it's possible that there are people living on this planet right now who won't die in this particular incarnation, we could potentially be on the doorstep of this shift in our lifetimes?
Right. There will be a number of people on this planet who will simply transform. And when that actually, and I've had some people ask me that recently, it's like, what will that moment look like? Well, what will happen is, as this wave of energy is coming across you, you look down, and instead of seeing your organic fingers, covered with skin, and for those guys of us who have hair, hair in our arms, you'll be looking at your hand, and your hand will transform from being organic with skin and fingers and nails to retaining the same shape, but getting bigger, and they'll be translucent. They'll still look like fingers, but they'll be translucent. They'll have color to them. And what was your skin, muscle, bone, tissue, you'll see like a fine residue of baby powder. basically, until it blows off. Men will generally be 7'4", 7'5", 7'6". Comparatively, will weigh, I don't know, like 6-7 pounds at most. Women will be like 6 feet tall, 6'4", roughly. They'll weigh 3 to 4 pounds ish. Those are all approximates. But we will be made out of crystalline fine essence matter, also called spirit matter. And that's what spirit. That's literally what spiritual life is from perspective. From a higher functionality and capability perspective, we go from having the normal skills that we have today of hearing and listening and thinking and interpreting to having hyper hearing capability. So, clairaudience, clairsentience. We'll get to see a whole new range of colors we've never seen before.
Wow.
A lot of what we're talking about exists on the planet today, but people can't see it. There are higher vibratory beings that exist on the planet today that people who have really heightened senses can see, can perceive, can communicate with. So we'll also start to see beings we've never seen before, simply because we've changed, we've evolved.
Wow.
So
do you think?
I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, man, it's amazing. Right. Sign me up, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that we get there? It seems like there's two ways of getting there. There's the way of slowly humanity wakes up, realizing that the power lies within them, and then we rally together and we remove our controllers and we take back the planet and we regreen the planet together and slowly clean up the messes we've created and so on and so forth. And this takes maybe a generation or two. Or is it we're headed towards the brink of the cliff of destruction and the controllers don't give up their power so easily, and there's some sort of galactic Star Wars battle where at the telling moment, some big help comes or some big bang, if you will, happens.
Sure. There are a number of components to this answer, so I'll approach them the best way that I can. The Andromeda Council. As I mentioned, there are 12 senior members. One of the 12 senior member planets, Procyon star system, planet Cana. Those people back to, I think 2010, 2011, ending up in 2012. Because of the work they did down here, they busted up, cleaned up, destroyed, eradicated 15, 16 undersea and a couple of underground reptilian bases that had been on this planet for years and years and years. The hierarchy of the power structure on Earth of people has been subservient to their reptilian bosses for years. So that was actually the real beginning. When all these bases were removed in 2011 and 12, that was the real beginning of the dismantling of the power structure on this planet, otherwise known as the powers that be.
Could the reptilians have been taken out earlier, but just weren't allowed to? I mean, maybe they're, is that what the 2012 thing was? Or was it that the other galactics weren't strong enough to get rid of them? Or how does that work exactly?
You know what? It's a really good question. I haven't asked about the appropriateness of when was the right time. I should probably ask that question, but
no worries.
Most of what happens on this planet, as I said to a lot of people, and they kind of shake their heads when they hear it the first time around, but most of what happens on this planet is not about when, it's about what, in terms of levels of achievement of awareness and consciousness that's beyond our current knowledge. And when, sorry, I don't always have the right words to describe what I'm trying to talk about, but when human consciousness reaches certain levels, then other things happen. So it's like if then. If certain things happen, then other things can happen after that. And so it probably had to do with certain levels of consciousness that, and a combination of somebody down here asked for help. Because based on the way that the people from the Andromeda Council, by the way, which is known by its own ambassadors and diplomats in deep space, it's known as the Galactic Council out there. There had to be a request or a number of requests to say, enough is enough. We want help, we need help. So we got it. There has been progressively since then, as reported by a whole bunch of other people other than me, a clearing out of what's known as the Cabal, the Illuminati, the powers that be, and all the names that they go by. The clearing out of the people that have been maliciously controlling and abusing billions of others of us on this planet is progressively consistent with the movement of this star system through space into a higher energy of space with higher frequencies. Because as we get into that area of space with higher energies and frequencies, which will ultimately trigger our transformation, those lower level beings, literally, like 4.1, 4.2, those people who still thrive on killing, controlling, manipulating, eating, abusing Earth humans, they literally will not be able to survive the shift. So those kinds of people, and even common people on this world that live like that, they won't be able to survive the higher dimensional shift of this world. They're likely going to reincarnate some other place so they can learn whatever lessons they need to learn somewhere else on some 3D world. But because we're going to be transforming into a world that brings us at 4.5 or 4.6, even in its first iteration, those malevolent, hateful, controlling, malicious beings will literally not be able to survive here. So the short answer is it an evolutionary process where things are happening and people are involved in change? Yes. Will the moment of change take a lot of time? No. They've shown me that when the peak of a whole bunch of things happen cosmically in space and here on Earth, that's when the transformation of this world will happen. Like the snap of the finger, a blink of an eye, the actual moment of transformation will be instantaneous. The lead up to that moment of transformation, this year, next year, the year after, I don't know exactly. We're going to do what we're going to do as people on this planet. And, I from a personal perspective, because I've been taking a lot of time in these past few months and the last few winters as well, taking care of Mom, I get exposed to more daily news because she's part of that World War II generation. She's always glued to the TV. I'm astounded. I'm astounded at how much we are still, as a global society, schoolyard children.
Yeah.
The Arabs and the Israelis, the Syrians and the Libyans, and World War II. I mean, go back to the 40s, on this planet, the 1940s on this planet. The Germans and the Japanese, the Axis powers and the Allied powers. We've been killing each other on this world for years, all because of gold, because of oil, because of politics. My God is better than your God. We've got a lot of growing up to do before we will be invited to any cosmic organization that's out in space. So what I'm trying to get to here is a higher dimensional transformation that is imprinted as part of this planet's evolutionary blueprint does not come automatically with emotional evolution. People have to choose to want to grow if they want to. A literal person who is now vibrating at a spiritual rate is not necessarily more emotionally mature. They can go hand in hand, but not necessarily. And this is a pretty heady concept to think about, because people these days, in general, the more awakened ones, like out in the western states, and the New Mexicos and the Arizonas and the Colorados and the Californias of the world, those people, when these people come to conferences, they're asking really high-level questions about the differences between this life we live today and higher dimensional spiritual life. The questions are college level and master's level. There are people who are asking questions that are still at grammar school level. And those people still don't realize that emotional growth is different than a transformational or a higher dimensional shift. Spiritual growth is different than emotional growth. They should go hand in hand, but not necessarily. Just because somebody is aware of higher level beings and aware of higher level dimensions and has that knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've healed from all the pain that they're carrying.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that they're making the best decisions every day for themselves, their family, with regard to their friends.
I've seen this a lot with, like those who are healers, they have so many, these great gifts, but then they're unable to be in the space of using their gifts so often because they're always having their breakdowns, like the breakdowns from their lack of development within their emotional, spiritual journey. So yeah, it's one of those things where hopefully everyone can see that connection, and how if you really want to be a tool, in the hand of the Creator and the divine, and be there for people, it's like you have to go inward, like on a regular basis. Right. It's got to go in or out, or so many people want to save the world and be outside of themselves all the time. When it just doesn't work that way. If you're always outside of yourself, you might be escaping something that you're trying to run away from.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just my belief, but how can each of us be a gift to other people around us and affect us, either 20 or 30 or 100 of us, if we haven't put our own houses in order, if we haven't done the work necessary to transmute, to release whatever pain that we've carried from our childhood, from our teenage years, because we all have stuff that we live through, and it creates emotional pain. And if we carry emotional pain without cleaning it out, without releasing it, that can create some really messy negative cause and effect multiple times over in our lives. And as direct relevance, from what I understand, the vibration of this coming transformation that we're supposed to make. The fourth dimension is all about releasing fear, releasing pain, going into your heart, being in a space of love. But people still, even with the transformational shift, it's something that people, if they want to, can choose to do. There's the number that I discussed is somewhere around 50% plus or minus. That's the best case scenario of the numbers of people on this planet that will likely become higher dimensional people. There's a whole bunch of people who just aren't ready to do the emotional work necessary. And that's why when I and others, people that are organizing and producing conferences, that the healing aspect is discussed because it's relevant to higher dimensional life and where we're going.
Yeah, it seems like a prerequisite.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what your listeners are like, and I know this information is intense, but they're all aspects of communication, connection with higher dimensional life, and then eventually living as higher dimensional beings. Because just as a simple metaphor, the emotions of anger and hate and greed literally have a lower vibratory rate than kindness and love and caring and consideration. They also have corollary colors. They also have corollary sound. So there's a lot more here than people realize. There's I don't know, within the past, call it 6-8 years or so, something like that. Time flies for me. But there was a test done. I'm sure you've heard of it, where they put 2 glasses of clear fresh water out, and they bombarded one glass with really aggressive, loud, like hard metal rock, and it showed like all of the molecules getting really fractured.
Right.
And then it exposed a completely different glass of water to Mozart, Beethoven, and they look closely at the molecules of this water. This is happy water.
Yeah, it's all in harmony.
So it's just like really, really happy.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff is real in terms of the things we're exposed to every day and how they affect us.
Let me, if I may, steer us in the direction of what's happening right now on the planet, and we're specifically, I guess, this in the Western world where we have this push towards nationalism again. That's why guys like Trump exist, or Le Pen in France, or Putin. You have these. We have like we want to come back to states' rights. We're running the other way from this idea of globalism and globalism in these larger communities, because it seems like most people are waking up to the fact that they're not working, and they're not working the way they were set out to be, and that there's people that who've kind of hijacked them because of their own greed, or although I know it goes much beyond greed. I know there's another agenda that's being played out as well. But just kind of curious, if tell me what you, from a galactic perspective, how are we seeing this particular part in the timeline?
As many people use this term, excuse me, the galactics are at that point. And that includes not only the galactics that are higher, more higher. Let's see if I'm saying this right. The galactics that are more evolved than we are, that live, if you will, to use common terms, a more quote unquote spiritually evolved lives. Now, I'm not talking about the physicality of spirituality right now. I'm talking about the consciousness of spirituality.
Right.
those organic life forms that exist throughout the cosmos that are, doing battle, if you will, with evil on Earth and within the solar system, that are having different council meetings, as has been talked about by Corey Good and others. The fight against evil, which has been going on with the reptilians for a while, and there are actually only a few of them down here left on planet, but that fight is still going on. It's not a war, it's a cleanup operation. So from that perspective, that work is still being done. From an evolutionary perspective on this planet, as it concerns the Galactic Council, the Andromeda Council, we have to clean up our messes. We've got to become emotionally adult people in our decision-making process. And this process of, instead of thinking global all the time, but thinking more local, I think is apropos, because how can we be good, balanced trading partners, we, in this case, being the U.S., how can we lead by example around the world if we don't get our act together first? And here's some relevance. It's my understanding, based on a few sources, including a gentleman who I've told the story before, but it's worth telling because it cites evidence of control and manipulation of the system. Springtime 1994, I was playing tennis in Tucson with a bunch of guys that were a lot older than me. I was the kid, I was in my 30s. Guys are mostly in their 60s and very early 70s, mostly retired. One of them was a gentleman who was an elder statesman from Massachusetts. And he was with the State Department during the Vietnam War. So he was definitely in the know in terms of the system and how it worked, and still works. And during a break in sets, we got into a number of different conversations, and one of them led to the statement that he made. And he looked at me, he said, "Do you realize that since President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, every single president since him has been appointed?" And we all looked at this guy dumbstruck. We're like, "Really?" He's like, "Oh yeah." And then he cited a whole bunch of other information. But that means that every single national election for president since then has been a fraud. It's been fake. It's been theater. A fraud perpetuated on the American people. It's been a waste of our time, our money, our resources, our energy, all sorts of our intellect. And so we've had a fraudulent system, at least since Jack Kennedy was killed, where we don't really have control of our government at the highest levels. Now, do people have control over, let's say you live in Chicago and you need to vote for your city councilman? Yeah, you have that kind of control, and you likely elect your governor. But not the national level. And so why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because this man, who happens to be named Donald Trump, was also appointed, but he was appointed during a time of change. The bad people who have been in power for a long time, controlling things for a long time, have been taken out of those seats of control. And there are new people that are in power, and they said, we need to bring in someone from outside of the system. And that's what Donald Trump is. He may wear a logo, but he's first and foremost a businessman who's built things and developed things over the course of his life. One of the reasons that there is what people call cognitive dissonance is because you have all of these talking head media news people who have been continuing, certainly in the first month, 2 months of his period in office. They keep asking him questions like he's a politician, and he keeps answering like a businessman. So people are confused.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on. There has to be, to answer your question, to get to the center of your question, if we are going to walk our talk as an enlightened nation on this planet, then we're going to have to clean our house up. And that's what this period of time is all about. And Trump is just the first one. My own people, the guy who's the commander of the primary Andromeda Council Biosphere, said, when I asked him in November of 14, said, what's coming with this election? What's the deal with this guy Obama, and what's next for us? Again, I asked this question in 2014, and his answer was, and this is about as pretty close to a quote as possible, the man that you know as Barack Obama, who was appointed as president, will be the last president of his type of your country as you know it today. The new man who will be appointed will be from outside of your systems, and he will invoke many, many changes. The form of government that you have will change. There will be a number of departments and agencies that will be broken down and reduced. You have massive changes coming to your country. And it was I was getting all of these images as I was getting this information, and it's amazing to see that is exactly what's going on right now. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not endorsing what Donald Trump is saying. What I am saying is that he's doing exactly what the people told me, my contact people told me, back in November of 2014. When I get it, and just for the record, that's just one piece of confirmation that I have had as I have interviews and conversations, and have had them over the past 6+ years. I've lost track of the numbers of times that I've learned something that my people have already told me, or I've heard something in conversation that somebody else like me is going through in the course of their lives, like Win Keach or Simon Parks or other people like us. And we start to confirm the same information that we've been given. It's pretty, from my perspective, it's, yeah, right. It's pretty exciting. And I'll go, yes, confirmation. Yeah. You know what I'm not a weird duck. I haven't lost my mind. I'm okay. You know, my feet are grounded.
Right.
But I'm getting some pretty neat information that I'm watching get confirmed right before my eyes. So to summarize this long-winded answer to your question.
Oh, no, it's okay.
This is a time of transition as we start to have changes in our country that will, in essence, give our country back to us. That's why states' rights are important, because the states are concerned about their citizens, the people of the states. And Donald Trump is a man who believes in the rights of citizens according to the Constitution. So it's if you will, it's dismantling of a federal bureaucracy.
He seems like the battering ram.
Yeah.
You know, he's not the hero that we were expecting. You know, and he's, in fact, he might not even be a hero per se, but he's a hero.
Right.
He might just be a hero to the extent that he's challenging certain people that haven't been challenged in a very long time, and I think that's a good thing. Even though it's like half the stuff he does seems like very much for the freeing humanity, and then the other half is like, what the hell's wrong with you, man?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
We're putting a damn pipeline in. I don't care about those Indians. You know, it's like, I mean, he has a chance to gain everyone's trust, and yet he does half the stuff he does just enrages everyone. So now it's like half the country literally thinks he's the enemy, as if the world's problems are all into this man who's, you know, he's
and I didn't
been
say
so
this guy was
careless.
an angel.
Oh, I
didn't
know
say
you
he was
didn't.
an angel.
Oh,
and,
I know you
and
didn't.
I didn't say he was going to be right all the time.
No, it doesn't really matter. It's not, that might not be his purpose, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It seems like that's what you're saying is maybe that's more he is. He's like the guy running into the building with all the dynamite. He's just going to blow it to pieces. And I mean, good.
He's making people think. He's making them ask questions. I mean, think of the generations of people before us. That whole, I know I'm going to reach back a few years here, but it's sort of like, General Motors, General Boomoose, apple pie in the USA. You know, that whole generations of people sort of, oh, our government is good. They're taking care of us. No. Mm-hmm. not at a federal level. Not really. Not really. No. As evidenced by one of the guys that was a tennis partner of mine. You know, there were a bunch of us, but this elder statesman from Massachusetts said, I was in the State Department, and Jack Kennedy was assassinated. He was murdered, and every single president since him has been appointed. I mean, when you hear a statement like that and the veracity of it, and you go, whoa, think of the implications of that statement and how it permeates from the top down. Then you start going, how much is broken and hidden that's been broken for years that we don't know about? Mm-hmm. How deep does it go? And that's part of what Trump is doing. He may seem to be haphazard, but he's definitively trying to shine a spotlight on a busted system. And he's not pretty about it, but he's doing it.
Yeah, and some of his solutions aren't so great. You know, it's not nope. They're different, but they're not so great too. So right. It's like I understand. I so get the criticism he gets. I mean, I give it to him too. I mean, I don't like some of his connections. You know, especially when it comes to Zionist Israel and things like that. I don't know what his intentions are, but he does seem to be against kind of the globalist agenda of the United Nations and right. The central banking system. I'm hoping, God, I mean, if he does eventually turn the battering ram on to the Federal Reserve, then we really got a guy, man. We got a guy he'll be the best president that we've ever had if he does something like that.
Right. If the Federal Reserve, a private agency of what's called the U.S. government, is finally revealed for what it is, and the power is taken away from that body, and if we really start to issue money, which has been talked about for years now, if we start to issue money by the U.S. Treasury, then things will change. They will change for the better in the current form that we're in. But everything that I've been taught by what we call the galactics, whether they're higher dimensional or not, but at least according to the higher dimensional people, they don't use money in space. It doesn't exist. There's just cooperation. There's essentially intercultural exchange. There is trade. Like, you guys have some apples, we've got some peaches. Let's trade. Mm-hmm. You guys have some gold, we have some silver. Let's trade. And it happens on multiple levels, specifically education and cultural exchange. People will leave one planet and they'll go to school on another planet. Happens all the time. But money doesn't exist. It does not exist. So, and the guys upstairs have told me, it's going to take us, once that moment of the transformational, higher dimensional shift happening on this planet, once that moment occurs, they've told me that based on the way we calculate time today, it's going to take approximately 10 to 12 years for us to go from a money-based economic system, a global money-based economic system, to a system whereby people are just helping each other. It's just cooperation and sharing. It's going to take 10 to 12 years on this planet because that money-based system has been entrenched for so long.
Yeah, do you ever I mean, I oftentimes think that maybe we're spiritually aren't even ready for that. You know, I mean, we the people, we want to blame it on these controllers, right? But at the end of the day, are we the people ready to create abundance together? Are we the people ready to share in our abundance with each other? Are we the people, you know, we're not going to leave any man left behind? And at the same time, not creating a welfare system, but a system that, you know, empowers everyone to find their purpose. I mean, shit, man, we have to be ready for that ourselves, you know?
Right. So, and somebody was asking me this question rhetorically, about a year and a half ago. And I said, which we? Who we? Who are you talking about, we? And he went, I said, well, that's exactly the question. There will be a moment of higher dimensional shift on this world, but choices will be made by people on a person-by-person basis. Do I want to live in a way that is kind and loving and cooperative and non-critical of others? Or do I want to cheat? Do I want to steal? Do I want to take some stuff away from him because I like it and I want it? Those kinds of ways of living are radically different from each other, and those kinds of ways of living are done on a person-by-person basis. So based on everything I've seen, I do not see the whole global society all of a sudden becoming good, kind, caring, considerate people. A percentage of us here on planet Earth will, but not everybody's going to make that choice.
Yeah,
I've been spending, as I mentioned, I've been spending some time here on the East Coast for the past 3 years plus, and a little longer. And there is a focus on greed and power, on what somebody has. There's a focus on pettiness. I've never experienced some of the mean-spirited kind of behavior here out west. I just don't when I'm west. It's a completely different vibration. So the we is individual. It may be regional also, but it's definitely individual on a per-person basis. People have choices to make.
Yeah, and even it's funny how oftentimes those people come together in geographical areas. You know, they resonate with each other. There's a certain vibration that they find that they're in, and they move to those cities, or and of course that we don't want to generalize. Every city, everyone in a certain city is a certain way. There's people of all different varieties, that are there. But yeah, man, it's fascinating to see how that's worked. And I wanted to ask you, is this kind of like the hero's journey of a planet, and do all species who have their chance at life on any planet throughout the galaxies, is there a reason why we're even allowed to have some sort of reptilian aliens come here, and are they the resistance to our evolution that we need? I mean, does every civilization need to experience some sort of hero's journey against the dark forces, and then through that they learn to love themselves and see themselves and move, rise up through through the dimensions in a sense?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I can tell you what I know about the Draco reptilians and Hydra reptilians and those from Orion and Sirius B. They feel that this part of space and this planet is theirs. That's their opinion. They feel they have a right to this world. and to the resources on this world. As I also mentioned, based on everything that I've learned, every galaxy, every star, every planet has its own evolutionary blueprint. I'd have to say that planet Earth has a really diverse repository of life, of fish, insects, mammals, and humans. From what I've learned, there are more different species of humans on this Earth than almost anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah, this planet is certainly a microcosm at minimum for this galaxy. Most other worlds have 1, 2 species generally on a per world basis, where we have, Caucasians, people who came from the Dogon star system that we today called Africans, that are African Americans, the people from planet Dakota, which essentially are all of the Native Americans in the American West and Southwest and beyond. Asian people. It's no mistake that Asians look different from Africans, which look different from Caucasians, which, it's because we did not evolve out of the same pod, if you will. We're different humans. Physically, we're different humans. Genetically, we're different humans. So it makes the diversity in us, in terms of how we act, how we react to certain situations, the diversity in the different theological beliefs of every culture, that my God versus your God thing, the difference in cultures, how people act in society, all those differences make this world a really challenging place to live and grow. I've been told that if you want a really quick education and you want to evolve spiritually, come to Earth. This is the place to get it. And you can get it almost as many lifetimes as you want. Because, if you didn't get it in 790 BC, and if you didn't get it in 4 AD, and if you didn't get it in 300 AD or 700 and 900, you can just keep coming back. Keep coming back. Learn as much as you need to learn. But it seems, based on everything that I've told, that we are in a short countdown. That this is our time of transition, leading right up to the time of higher dimensional change of our world. And that's why it's because we're in this higher vibratory energy of space. It's because we're going through what seemed to be, like you said when we first started, like all of these changes going on. Well, all of these changes going on, it seems that they're happening so fast right now is because we are in that time of transition. This is, it's kind of like, you remember being in school. It's like, okay, I'm at the end of my junior year. I'm about to become a senior.
Yeah.
Right? This is kind of like what it's at. There's a lot of things that happen toward the end. And we're, of course, in a time for those people who are conscious of all this stuff and awake and aware, we're anticipatory. A lot of people are like, I just want this shift to happen now. Come on, let's get on with it already.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to take as long as it's going to take based on what we need to do collectively and individually.
So what's the proper mindset, I suppose, for someone who's watching this and witnessing it and can feel it happening, but we get impatient, we get impatient, we're ready for it. We want it to happen now. Like what, right. So many of us get exhausted by this because we put ourselves into the storyline as if we can control it. And then when we realize we can't, we get frustrated. And
right.
It's like watching the Trump thing as if any of us are really directly have any say in affecting it. I mean, we've kind of figured that our vote doesn't even matter. So now what do we do? It's just like, And I'm not saying
I
all
tend
the
to,
votes don't matter, but definitely certain, the presidentials, and like you had mentioned the story that you shared with your Vietnam friend. Um, it's where is the right way to watch this unfold right now, and then at the same time take action when necessary.
there's a friend of mine who helped me, who assisted me a lot in getting the 2016 Transformational Shift Conference in Tucson to help make it happen. She really put herself out there for a few months on end, helping me to get this thing launched. And her name is Cheyenne Stone, very bright lady. And I'm bringing her up because she said to me once, she's like, we were speaking about these kinds of topics between the two of us. She said, the best thing people can do is put your arm out and see that point at the end of your fingertips. Realistically, that's about as far out as you can evoke change in your life and or affect somebody else's life. I was like, wow, that's a really good metaphor. Put your arm out, look out to the end of your fingertips.
I love that.
In my words, in my words, that would be, is each of us being the most stable, the most considerate of others, the most giving person that we can be on a moment-by-moment, hour-by-hour basis each day of our lives? And are we doing as much as we can and need to stay balanced each day? Getting out in nature, taking a walk, going into the woods, going up to the Sedona area, walking the hills, whatever it is, wherever people live. Because it's the vibration of nature, I've been told, is the same vibration of love. So the more we spend out in nature, the easier it is for us to stay balanced. And I'm not the only one saying that. There are a number of people that are starting to say that being out in nature is a big, important piece of staying balanced in our lives. So how do we do it? By considering all those topics that I just addressed. I think that's how we do it, by being the best person that we can be each moment, each hour of each day of our lives. And after you've done that, that's all you can do. The cards are going to fall where they're going to fall.
Yeah.
You, as you know, we can't control others. We might be able to influence, but controlling other people, that's their job. I don't know if that answers your
What
question,
about even sharing this kind of information? Is it up to them to just figure it out on their own? Meaning, right now we have, like, the world is so polarized, man. It's so crazy. I've never seen anything like it before. I mean, even people within my own friend group, like, they think I'm absolutely crazy for even thinking Trump has anything good about him at all. That he's doing anything remotely to our benefit. And they think I'm nutso for it. And I get it. I understand it. But it's like, I can see, like, this weird, like, division going on in our world. And it makes me feel like, as events keep accelerating, that what are we going to end up in some sort of civil war, like the Trump people versus the non-Trump people? I mean, geez, let's calm down here, people. This is crazy.
Well, I think that if you look back to, now granted, it was happening more on college campuses, but it's starting to look like the 70s for the number of people that are protesting. Now, I'm only one person, so here's my perspective.
Yeah.
I believe that there will probably always be people who want to put themselves out in the front lines and make their voices heard. They have their placards and their signs, and whatever it is they feel that they need compelled to protest, there's just a personality type that feels compelled to protest for whatever cause they feel is the most important. Having said that, this is a time of change. And what I've learned from my people about teaching, all of this information that you're talking about, is that if you gaze, as an example, Clint, if you get engaged in a conversation with some friends of yours, and I'm going to use some metaphors, so just bear with me. I'll use the school metaphor. If they are engaged with you at like a 10th or 11th grade mode of thinking, of being, of consciousness, of awareness, of emotional balance and perspective, then according to spiritual law, we can only provide answers to those people at a 10th or 11th grade perspective. If they start to ask questions that seem to resonate at a higher level of 12th grade, of the first year of college, or the second year, again, it's a metaphor, but if they seem to indicate that they're more conscious and more aware of some of the subtleties of what's behind the things that Trump and other people are doing,
mm-hmm.
of the subtleties beyond the obvious information about contact, then it is rightful for us to answer at an 11th or 12th grade level. Based on everything I've learned, it's only appropriate to answer the question at the level of knowledge that person is asking it, because you can't push them to be better. You can't push them to grow. You can't push them to learn. It's more of a pull. They have to want to learn, to open, to grow. And when you get indications that they're stepping up, you can start answering questions that have deeper meaning, that have deeper, greater depth, more spiritual value. That's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes sense for you, but that's
no,
how
absolutely.
I try to handle it.
I think that's some deep wisdom there. That's like what the Buddha how he would answer. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, and and I do it myself. Whenever there are rare few people who engage me here, where I've temporarily been for the past 3-4 years in Florida, that can ask questions at the level you and I are talking about. Very, very few. When I get back to Arizona, it'll be a completely different story. There are many more people in Arizona who are awake, conscious, aware, asking some really challenging questions. So,
I suppose I suppose migration patterns are also kind of correlate with concentrations of higher consciousness, I suppose. And again, man, I know this is a slippery slope because it seems like you're trying to say some people are better than other people, but
I'm not saying better.
I know.
More
that's
evolved, more evolved, more awake and aware.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's fascinating because I look here in Arizona. I live here in Arizona, and you've lived here too. And most people here are from other places. Probably 9 out of 10. And, people were coming here for new beginnings. People are coming, they're leaving the Midwest, they're leaving the East Coast, they're even leaving California. And they come to places like Arizona because they want a fresh start. They want a place that's more, economically makes sense, better cost of living. They're looking to get away from kind of the closed-mindedness or maybe even family situations that are suffocating them and strangling them.
Right. That's right. It is definitely a more free thinking state, without a question. People are not at all afraid to have conversations, to have discourse like this, and explore these topics at all.
It's not a mistake that Silicon Valley is in San Jose, California. You know what I mean? It took getting away from the old world in a sense, and that even means the old part of the United States. It's no different than when the Europeans migrated to the United States. They were getting away from the old world of suffocating religious, persecution, And it's kind of in a less to a lesser degree. I think you see that in the West. You know what here right here, the Western migration in the United States.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen it recently, but years ago I saw a map of the U.S. and it showed how the energy of a certain area influenced people's actions. And the Northeast, as an example, you know, the New Yorks and the Bostons of the world, it's all about power and money and control. And as you go west, that changes completely. You know, freedom of expression and independence and exploration gets greater and greater the farther west you go. Completely different. You know, like I said, the Colorados, the Arizonas, the New Mexicos of the world, that's just a different world. It's a different world. The challenge is when you get to a place like, you know, Phoenix, and you're in a city center, people, or you know, Los Angeles in a city center. Then you have, even taking into account the vibration of that geographical region, you still have the influence of what happens when people come together in a city. It tends to be a faster pace. You know, more people, bigger problems, bigger issues.
Right.
The more people go out into the country, the less big the problems, the lesser the issues.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that a place like Phoenix is like, oh, this like utopian paradise of, you know, of higher thinking, or hell no. I mean, God, we have a guy like Joe Arpaio who's been the sheriff for the last 20 years, you know.
Yep.
There's a lot of closed-minded thinking out here in Arizona too. I mean, God, marijuana is still illegal. We didn't pass the vote. There's a lot of, you know, bad feelings towards immigrants. There's, you know, it's because
Arizona's a border state.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
but
we still
general,
carry with us some of that, all that silly bullshit, but it's more like, it seems like the system itself isn't as dominating, I suppose. And so, and I don't know, maybe even a connection, maybe there's even more of a search for a connection with nature. You know, some of these climates in the West are, you can be outside more often when you live in the Western United States.
Yeah, it's almost a completely different, actually it is a different way of living. You and I grew up in the Northeast, and people, you know, when May hit, we were excited because we knew from May through September we were going to get some good weather. And then the door was closed. That's not the case in the Southwest. For the most part, and as you know, people live outside more than anything else. They're out in nature simply because they're outside more. It's just it's a different way of life, and I feel grateful that I'm going to be returning to that soon. But it's all part of the mix of daily decisions that people can make to improve the quality of their lives. And
absolutely, man.
I'm
excited. Why don't you tell us about your you know, your workshops that you're going to be running over the summer and all the way into the fall, and what can someone expect if they were attending it?
Sure. If people head over to this website, transformationalshiftevents.com, and they punch up the USA Special Events page, they'll find a number of events that I'm going to be holding, and where I'll be speaking with people like Adana of Star Ancestry, Alexandra Metters of Galactic Connection, Suzanne Ross and Shakina Rose of Supernatural Sedona. We'll be talking about topics such as the true nature of each of us as a multidimensional being, our star ancestry. You know, who are we? Where do we come from? Why are we here? The real reasons that the powers that be, New World Order, is going down. What to expect out of 4D and 5D life. how life in those higher dimensions is vastly different from 3D, and quite a few other topics that people generally are talking about as higher level spiritual topics these days. Some of these events, specifically Sedona in September and Tucson in September, I'll be having some noted Native American teachers, Chief Golden Light Eagle, Pete Jackson, who is an elder for the Pima Gila River people, Grandmother Silver Star, who's part Lakota, Cherokee, and a few others. The Sedona events and Tucson events will always incorporate Native American people to teach some of what they know about this time of change. So on this page, this USA Special Events page, it starts with June 3rd, and it goes through November of 17, and where we'll be speaking, starting with Portland, Oregon, and ending up in Phoenix in November. And actually, you and I will be collaborating in that November event. So
yeah, man, looking forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. And on the tickets page, people will have an opportunity to pick and choose which events they want to go to and buy their tickets ahead of time. I'm doing my best that I can to keep them reasonably priced. They're pretty much all one-day events, except for the Mount Shasta. It will be like a day and two-thirds. So they're going to be affordable. I don't have all of the tickets for sale yet because I'm still selecting venues for each of those spots. But in the coming weeks or so, I'll get those venues selected. People will get a chance to hear me and Alexandra and Suzanne and Shakina and Donna and those noble Native Americans who have so much to teach over the summer months. So it's going to be a good rate. It's going to be a great year.
I would love, and Tolec, I would, you and I already discussed having you come back on, but the next time you come back on, I would love to get into the connection between the Native Americans and the Galactics, because we know here in Arizona, the Hopi Indians, who are so famous for their beliefs and all the many of their prophecies being very much connected to interdimensional worlds, and they were very knowledgeable about the star peoples. Even the three mesas are aligned with Orion's belt, just like the pyramids of Egypt. So it's a trip, and I know you know a good amount about that. I'd love to dive into that next time you come on and get more into. I'd love to get more even into our own creation story and how that connects with the history of what's been going on in our galactic neighborhood. And so appreciative that people like you have this gift. And for anyone listening, I mean, take this for whatever you want it. Take Tolec's claims of his connections to other parts beyond this world. Take it as you want, but just listen to it. Take it with an open mind. If Tolec's sharing with you many parts of what's going on this planet with such wisdom and such perspective, it's possible that what he's seeing is going beyond that as well, and that's for each of us to take in and until we also have our own personal experiences, then you can classify them as such. But I think there's still wisdom to gain in understanding what's happening here. And like you said, there's a bunch of people that are saying the same things, and it's not like you're collaborating together. It's funny how that works. I mean, most whether that be channelers or whether that be people like you who are receiving this, how you receive your information. It's funny how a lot of the facts or a lot of the claims that you all make are pretty well connected. It's funny.
Yeah, I've been astounded when I've heard other people get information not from my sources, and yet the information lines up really, really close. It may not always be exact, but it lines up really, really close. And that's a good thing for me, because, like I said, I'm like, okay, I'm all right. I'll be okay. I've got my feet firmly planted.
We all want to know we're not alone in our craziness.
Right. Yeah. What I'm going through is I'm an ordinary guy, but I'm having some extraordinary experiences. I feel blessed. I wouldn't change anything. It's been a great run. It's been an amazing life. I feel blessed that I've had these contact experiences. I don't always understand them, but I guess because I'm curious, I keep asking questions. So that's a good thing. I keep learning stuff.
I'm glad to be a part of your journey in some way, shape, or form, and I'm grateful that we had this opportunity to talk today, my friend. And looking forward to future discussions with you. Can you tell our listeners where we can find your information and where we can keep up to date? I mean, I know you have a YouTube channel as well, but go ahead.
Yes. Yep. So the YouTube channel is Tolec, T as in Tom, OLEC, from Dakota, D as in David, AKOTE. So that's my YouTube channel. Websites are Andromeda Council. In this case, council is COUNCIL.com. And for all of these events this summer where I and others will be speaking, it's transformationalshiftevents.com.
Perfect. Tolec, thank you, my friend.
Clint, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. Have a great day.
You too, my friend.
All right, take care.